Okay, this is the lecture for our section 5, which is talking about economic institutions. So really, to understand how economics really works, we have to have some idea of what an institution is and what economic institutions are. Now, the first misconception that you might have is an institution like, say, for example, a financial institution or an educational institution. Okay, we're using the term a little bit differently here. The word institution in this case are the formal and informal rules that society uses to organize itself. And an economic institution is the formal and informal rules that a society uses to organize its economic activity. So one thing to know about this is these economic institutions, they differ significantly among nations. So a large part of economic institutions has to do with the degree of development of the society, the different cultural norms that exist within society. So one example of an economic institution is when we go to a restaurant, we tip the server. In the United States, it's customary to tip between 18 and 25%. Right, so a fairly large proportion of the tip. If you go to Germany, on the other hand, it's actually not very common to tip that highly. You would usually tip at a smaller rate, somewhere around 10%. These are two different institutions, and they're both ways that they're informal rules that we use to organize economic activity. They also seem to operate differently than economic theory predicts. For example, in the restaurant, well, if I'm tipping, well, economic theory says I should want to try to get the meal as cheaply as possible. Since there's nothing requiring me to leave a tip, then why do I leave a tip? Well, because there's this institution or this social norm which says I should, and so I'm obeying that economic institution, even though it does seem to somewhat conflict with what economic theory would suggest I should do.